This is your weekly docket for the week of January 22nd, 2024. I'm Ernest Bethea, the last outlaw. This is Bethea'S Byte, and it's reloaded. A judge has ruled that the case of a 15-year-old Wisconsin boy accused of killing a 10-year-old girl after luring her into the woods will remain in adult court. Chippewa County Judge Stephen Gibbs, in a 22-page decision issued Monday, sided with the state in ruling that court proceedings in the slaying of 10-year-old Ileana Lily Peters will remain in adult court, according to the Milwaukee Journal-Sentinel. Gibbs recently heard arguments from lawyers representing the suspect who sought to have the case moved to juvenile court. They argued the teen would receive better treatment in the juvenile system. The teen, listed in court documents as CPB, is charged with first-degree intentional homicide and 2 counts of first-degree sexual assault in the girl's April 24, 2022 death. In his decision, Gibbs agreed with prosecutors that moving the case to the juvenile system would diminish the severity of the act. The judge wrote, "The court disagrees that a possible 10-year confinement in the juvenile system, registering as a sex offender, and that the defendant would be vulnerable to the adult system would be punishment enough for the defendant." The teen allegedly persuaded the girl to leave a trail and explore the surrounding woods as she was riding her bike home from her aunt's house in Chippewa Falls. Searchers found her body the next morning. The boy told investigators that after they left the trail, he punched her, hit her with a heavy stick, and strangled her until she died, then sexually assaulted her body according to a criminal complaint. Anyone who is at least 10 years old and is accused of first or second-degree homicide is considered an adult in Wisconsin's court system. 3 white men convicted of hate crimes for chasing and killing Ahmaud Arbery in a Georgia neighborhood in 2020 will have their appeals heard by a federal court in March. The 11th Circuit Court of Appeals has scheduled oral arguments in the case for March 27th in Atlanta. Attorneys for father and son Greg and Travis McMichael and their neighbor William Roddy Bryan are asking the court to throw out hate crime convictions returned by a jury in coastal Brunswick in 2022. Arbery, age 25, was chased by pickup trucks and fatally shot in the streets of a subdivision outside the port city of Brunswick on February 23, 2020. His killing sparked a national outcry when cell phone video Bryan recorded of the shooting leaked online more than 2 months later. The McMichaels armed themselves with guns and pursued Arbery after he was spotted running past their home. Bryan joined the chase in his own truck and recorded Travis McMichael shooting Arbery at close range with a shotgun. The McMichaels and Bryan stood trial on hate crimes charges in U.S. District Court less than 3 months after all 3 were convicted of murder in a Georgia state court. Federal prosecutors used social media posts, text messages, and other evidence of past racist comments by all 3 men to argue they targeted Arbery because he was black. Attorneys for Greg McMichael and Bryan have argued in court filings that they chased Arbery because they mistakenly believed he was a criminal, not because of his race. Travis McMichael's appeal argues a technicality, saying prosecutors failed to prove that Arbery was pursued and killed on public streets, as stated in the indictment used to charge the 3 men. Prosecutors contend the defendants considered Arbery suspicious in large part because of his race. They say he was shot on a street maintained by the county government, proving it's a public road. Greg McMichael told police that he initiated the chase because he recognized Arbery from security camera videos that in prior months showed the young black man entering a neighboring home under construction. None of the videos showed him stealing, and Arbery was unarmed and had no stolen property when he was killed. Bryan joined in after seeing the McMichaels' truck pursuing a running Arbery past his house. Prosecutors argued at the trial that the McMichaels and Bryan chased and shot Arbery out of, quote, pent-up racial anger, end quote. Evidence showed that Bryan used racist slurs in text messages, saying that he was upset that his daughter was dating a black man. A witness testified Greg McMichael angrily remarked on the 2015 death of civil rights activist Julian Bond. "All those blacks are nothing but trouble," quote unquote. In 2018, Travis McMichael commented on a Facebook video of a black man playing a prank on a white person. Quote, "I killed that," end quote. Both McMichaels received prison sentences in the hate crimes case, while Brian was sentenced to 35 years in prison. Also pending are appeals by all three men of their murder convictions in Glynn County Superior Court. An Austrian man who had kept his daughter captive for 24 years and raped her thousands of times, fathering 7 children with her, can be moved from a psychiatric detention to a regular prison, a court ruled on Thursday. The decision, however, stipulates that Joseph Fritzl, age 88, will have to attend regular psychotherapy and undergo psychiatric evaluations during a 10-year probation period at the prison, according to the Austria press agency. A request to release him from detention was rejected, but the decision is still a win for Fritzl's legal team, as conditions in a regular prison are considered an improvement compared to strict controls in a psychiatric institution. His atrocious crime was revealed in 2008, and he was sentenced in 2009 to life imprisonment for committing incest, rape, coercion, false imprisonment, enslavement, and negligent homicide of one of his infant sons. Fritzl became known as the Monster of Amstetten after the northern Austrian town where he in 1984 locked up his then 18-year-old daughter in a soundproof basement of his house. Over the next 24 years, he repeatedly raped her and fathered 7 children with her, one of whom died. Fritzl's wife, who lived on the second floor of the home with the rest of the family, was allegedly unaware of what was going on in the basement, according to Austrian authorities. Fritzl's daughter disappeared in 1984 at age 18, re-emerging in 2008 from the dungeon-like basement chamber in Amstetten. When the case came to light, it made headlines around the world. A 3-judge regional court in the town of Krems ruled on Thursday that Fritzl, who now reportedly has dementia, could be moved to a regular prison based on a psychiatric assessment that he no longer poses a danger. The ruling overturned an earlier decision from 2022 when Fritzl's request to be moved to a regular prison was rejected. In summary, the court has come to the conclusion that it is indeed the case that he is no longer dangerous, Fritzl's lawyer Astrid Wagner told the Associated Press. She told the APA that she would continue to work for Fritzl's release. He was close to tears during the hearing, Wagner said. He said he was unbelievably sorry for his victims. He would love to undo everything he did. The verdict is not yet legally binding, and prosecutors have 14 days to lodge an appeal, again according to the APA. The man accused of murdering 4 college students in their home is due in court for 2 hearings, but the public will only be able to watch one of them. Brian Koberger is charged with murder and burglary for the deadly stabbings of Ethan Chapin, Xana Kernodle, Madison Mogen, and Kaylee Gonsalves on November 13, 2022. The 4 victims were students at the University of Idaho when they were found brutally murdered in the home they shared. The court has scheduled 2 separate meetings in Koberger's case for Friday, January 26th, but has ordered that the first hearing be closed from the public. The first hearing, scheduled for 11 a.m. Pacific Time, will address the renewed defense motion to dismiss the indictment on the grounds of a biased grand jury, inadmissible evidence, lack of sufficient evidence, and prosecutorial misconduct. The hearing will also cover a request by the defense to unseal their motion to reconsider the court's denials. In their motion requesting the documents be made public, Koberger's attorney said that all previous motions relating to the grand jury proceedings, which are always kept secret, have previously been sealed, and, quote, Mr. Kohlberger sought sealing of his filings solely based on email communications with the Latah County Prosecutor's Office stating they wanted the filings sealed, end quote. The prosecution has filed a motion objecting to the unsealing of the documents, but filed their response under seal. At 1 p.m. Pacific Time, the court will hold a second hearing for Kohlberger, but this will be open to the public and be broadcast live on courttv.com. That hearing will address a separate motion from the defense, which is asking the judge to reconsider his previous refusal to dismiss the indictment for inaccurate instructions to the grand jury. That motion argued that the grand jury should have been told to find, quote, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, end quote, rather than current Idaho law, which states the grand jury ought to find an indictment when all other evidence before them taken together, if unexplained or uncontradicted, would, in their judgment, warrant a conviction by a trial jury, end quote. Following the hearings, the judge set a scheduling conference where the parties are expected to set a date for what is predicted to be a 6-week trial. An Oklahoma father is facing charges in a rollover crash that killed his 16-year-old daughter. Elliot Binney was arrested and released on bond following a January 11th crash that killed Shelby Binney. Investigators said Shelby, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt and was thrown from the car, was pronounced dead at the hospital. 3 other family members were also injured in the crash and treated at the hospital. An arrest report obtained by Scripps News Tulsa stated witnesses told officers Elliot was driving approximately 70 miles per hour and passed multiple cars in a no-passing zone while it was raining. After the crash, officers found an unsealed bottle of vodka next to the passenger door. Elliot fled the scene of the crash. Bixby Chief of Police Todd Blish said he fled to a family member's home and switched vehicles and left the area. We were able to track him electronically and ultimately make an arrest the next morning. After being read the Miranda warning, Elliot told police they purchased the vodka and he drank a gulp while driving his family home. Scripps News Tulsa obtained the arrest video. He's charged with leaving the scene of a collision resulting in death, first-degree manslaughter, and passing a vehicle in a no-passing zone. Scripps News Tulsa reports that Elliot has an extensive criminal history involving vehicles, including 3 other charges of leaving the scene and a DUI. Just as he did a week ago, fugitive Nicholas Rossi caused more courtroom havoc at another session Tuesday, although this time he did it by not appearing at all. Rossi, who was extradited from Scotland after fleeing the country to avoid rape charges, was scheduled to be arraigned in front of Judge Derek Pullen in the 4th District Court. However, when Rossi's name was called, his attorney, Lance Bastian, said his client had declined to appear. "I'm sorry, can you say that again?" asked the judge. When Pullen asked if Rossi was ill, Bastian said he did not know and would try to find out the reason for him not showing up in the virtual session. "If he's not ill, he has no reasonable excuse. I will authorize reasonable force to compel his initial appearance," the judge said. Even without Rossi in attendance, Pullen still scheduled his first appearance for February 6th. Last week in a Utah court since his extradition, Rossi caused major confusion by claiming he was, as he has done previously, that his name was actually Arthur Knight and used a British accent that was difficult to understand. The state informed Judge Kimberly Hornack that Rossi had not given his current name or birth date, and let her know that he had been extradited to Utah. "Objection, milady," Rossi replied. "This is complete hearsay, and I would ask that your ladyship and prosecution show cause for why I am," before being cut off by Hornack. Rossi, whose legal name is Nicholas Oliverdian, maintains that he has been framed for allegedly raping a woman in Utah in 2008. A 20-month-old Brighton girl is dead after ingesting, quote, a significant amount of fentanyl, end quote, as her cries went unanswered for 14 hours, according to the 17th Judicial District Attorney's Office. Ariana Montoya's father, 33-year-old Alonzo Montoya, was convicted of child abuse, resulting in death and violating the Colorado Organized Crime Control Act, following a 2-week trial in Adams County District Court, according to the DA's office on Tuesday. Aviana's mother, 32-year-old Nicole Cassius, was also indicted by an Adams County grand jury on the same charges. Her case is set for a jury trial in March. Prosecutors said the pair were operating a drug-dealing operation out of their Brighton home, and home surveillance cameras showed drug-using activities before, during, and after Aviana's death. The toddler was found unresponsive in a crib in her room on January 2, 2023. She was eventually pronounced dead by arriving paramedics. The coroner determined that Aviana, who was teething at the time, died as a result of ingesting a significant amount of fentanyl. She had 10 times the amount of the powerful drug in her system needed to kill an intolerant adult user. They also found traces of methamphetamines in her system. Home surveillance cameras showed the little girl crying and struggling to breathe inside her crib before her death. No one checked on Aviana for nearly 14 hours, according to the 17th Judicial District Attorney's Office. District Attorney Brian Mason said in a statement, "It is one of the most outrageous cases I have seen. My heart breaks for this little girl, who truly never had a chance. I am grateful for my team for seeing this case through, as well as the Brighton Police Department and North Metro Task Force for their thorough investigative work. I thank the jury for sitting through the difficult facts and delivering a just verdict on behalf of Ariana." The last known set of remains linked to the Green River serial killer in Washington state belonged to a teenage girl who had previously been identified as a victim, according to authorities on Monday. The remains were identified as those of 16-year-old Tammy Lyles, according to the King County Sheriff's Office in a news release. Lyles is from Everett, Washington, north of Seattle, according to local media reports. Authorities had previously identified another set of partial remains belonging to Lyles. There are no other identified remains believed to be connected to Gary Ridgway, known as the Green River Killer, according to the Sheriff's Office. Ridgway preyed on girls and young women in the Seattle area who were in vulnerable positions, including sex workers and runaways, in the 1980s and 90s. He was long a suspect in the Green River killings, so-called because the first victims were found in the waterway, which runs through suburbs south of Seattle. Detectives were unable to prove this role until 2001, when advances in DNA technology allowed them to link a saliva sample they had obtained from him in 1987 to semen found on several victims. King County Sheriff spokesman Eric White told the Seattle Times that officials feel a sense of relief that they've been able to give family members of Ridgway's victims answers about what happened to their loved ones. It's an immense feeling of satisfaction that in this case, that started in the early 80s, we were able to identify all of Gary Ridgway's victims, White said on Monday. All 49 of them. Law enforcement identified Lyles as a victim of the Green River Killer in 1988 by matching her dental records to remains discovered near Tigard, Oregon. Ridgway led authorities to the second set of Lyles remains in southern King County in 2003. Investigators took a DNA sample from that second set of remains and uploaded it to a national law enforcement database to search for matches at the time, but none were found. In 2022, the Sheriff's Office contracted with Othram, a Texas-based genetic genealogy company that specializes in forensic DNA work. Othram built a DNA profile for the unknown victim, and the company's in-house forensic genetic genealogy team tentatively identified her as Lyles. Investigators got a DNA sample from her mother and confirmed the match. Ridgway has pleaded guilty to the 49 slayings, including Lyles. He is serving life without the possibility of parole at the Washington State Penitentiary in Walla Walla. Detectives have solved a 48-year cold case in which 3 young girls were abducted and assaulted, according to the Indianapolis Metropolitan Police Department. On October 19, 1975, at 10:45 p.m., Candace Smith, age 13, Sherry Rottler Trick, age 11, and Kathy Rottler, age 14, were leaving a gas station on Washington Street near Belmar Avenue on the east side of Indianapolis. Police say they decided to hitchhike, and a white male driving a station wagon pulled over and offered to give them a ride. IMPD says as the girls were in the vehicle, they realized the male had continued to drive past their final destination. The girls attempted to escape the vehicle but were unable to. Eventually, the man stopped near a cornfield in Greenfield. The suspect forced the 3 girls out of the vehicle and bound 2 of them, police say. He then sexually assaulted one of the girls before stabbing her. During the attack, the suspect also stabbed the other 2 girls numerous times. The suspect fled the area and left the girls in the cornfield. All 3 victims survived the attack. IMPD says 2 of the girls eventually made their way back to the highway and received help from a driver passing by. Police from several jurisdictions, including Indiana State Police, analyzed the crime scene and investigated the incident. A composite sketch was drawn and several leads were followed, but eventually the investigation stalled and the case went cold. No suspect was ever charged for the incident. In 2018, an IMPD sergeant reopened the case and had evidence and DNA analyzed. In 2021, the Indianapolis Marion County Forensic Services Agency linked the evidence to a possible suspect. In 2023, a genetic genealogy was completed by DNA Labs International in Florida. Steve Dubois, a client experience specialist at DNA Labs International, said, "The Forensic Intelligence System, the newest forensic investigative genetic genealogy technology, was designed specifically for challenging forensic examples. This testing enabled the development of a DNA profile 48 years later that was then used by DLI's genealogy team to generate a new investigative lead for law enforcement. DLI was also able to confirm this investigative lead using DNA kinship testing. Funding for this testing was provided by AudioChuck, an Indianapolis-based media company. Ashley Flowers, AudioChuck's founder and chief creative officer, said, "When the AudioChuck team was made aware of this need for funding, it was a no-brainer for us to step in. The advancements that have been made in DNA testing is astounding, and we're encouraged by what this means for cold and ongoing cases." The suspect was identified as Thomas Edward Williams, who died in November of 1983 while in prison in Galveston, Texas. IMPD will hold criminals accountable no matter how long it takes. That's according to IMPD Deputy Chief of Investigations Kendall Adams. He continued to say, "After 48 years, we can now tell these survivors who was responsible for this heinous act." Jodi Hildebrand will have to take her $5 million home off the market after a judge ruled that any sale will have to wait until her sentencing next month. The decision was made after Kevin Franke, the husband of YouTuber Ruby Franke, filed for restitution against Hildebrand earlier this week. Both Ruby Franke and Hildebrand pleaded guilty last month to multiple counts of aggravated child abuse after 2 of Franke's children were discovered malnourished and inside the Ilvins home. In the motion, Kevin Franke said the children have undergone medical care and have been subjected to psychological assessments and ongoing medical health treatment in an attempt to assist them in comprehending and recovering from these abuse injuries. Because the children needing long-term care, Kevin Franke says the cost will fall on him, not his wife or Hildebrand, the two who caused the suffering. The court agreed with the motion and ordered Hildebrand not to sell her home at least until she is sentenced on February 20th. Hildebrand placed her 4-bedroom Ilvins home at 850 West Tagu Court on the market earlier this month. Listed for $5.3 million, it is still listed online despite the judge's ruling. A man who fled the country after he was charged with the slaying of his wife more than 30 years ago in Northern Virginia has been returned to the United States to face murder charges, police said on Monday. At a press conference Monday, Fairfax County police officers said that Jose Lozaro Cruz was charged with the fatal stabbing of his wife, 24-year-old Ana Jurado, in 1991 in West Falls Church, Virginia. But police said Lozaro Cruz, who was then 24 years old, fled the country through the southern border with the help of a smuggler and established himself in El Salvador. At the time, El Salvador had no provisions to extradite suspects sought by the U.S. Lozaro Cruz was arrested in 2022 when he tried to enter Costa Rica. After a lengthy extradition process, he was brought back to the United States and is being held at the Fairfax County Jail where he awaits trial. Police say that detectives worked the case for years, traveling to El Salvador in the 1990s to gather information that eventually helped secure his arrest. Police Chief Kevin Davis said he avoided accountability for something he did nearly 33 years ago. We've never forgotten the family. We've never forgotten the seriousness of this crime. A Texas man has pleaded guilty to kidnapping a 13-year-old girl who was rescued in Southern California when a passerby saw her hold up a "Help Me" sign in a parked car. A statement Friday from the U.S. Attorney's Office in the Central District of Columbia said Stephen Robert Sablin, age 62, of Cleburne, Texas, admitted in a plea agreement that he sexually assaulted the victim while driving her from Texas to California. The girl was rescued July 9th in Long Beach, south of Los Angeles, after a passerby called 911 to report seeing her hold up the piece of paper with a handwritten, desperate plea for help. Sablin, who had been in federal custody since July of 2023, pleaded guilty to one count of kidnapping, prosecutors said. His attorney, Deputy Federal Public Defender Nadine Heddle, declined to comment Saturday. In July, Sablin was indicted by a federal grand jury on charges of kidnapping and transportation of a minor with intent to engage in criminal sexual activity. An FBI agent wrote an affidavit supporting the criminal complaint that the girl was walking down a street in San Antonio on July 6 when Sablin drove up, raised a black handgun, and told her, "If you don't get in the car with me, I am going to hurt you." A sentencing hearing was set for October 25th. Sablin will face a mandatory minimum of 20 years in federal prison and a maximum sentence of life. A reigning pageant queen in Georgia is accused of murdering an 18-month-old boy. 18-year-old Trinity Madison Pogue was booked into the Sumter County Jail on January 19th. She's charged with aggravated battery, felony murder, and cruelty to children in the first degree, according to jail records. The investigation began 5 days earlier, when the unresponsive child was admitted to a local emergency room, according to the Georgia Bureau of Investigation. Despite life-saving measures, the boy later died. Pogue's relationship to the child was not disclosed. However, WTVY reports she does not have children of her own. According to WALB, Pogue was crowned Miss Donaldsonville in 2023. Donaldsonville is approximately 4 hours south of Atlanta, near the Alabama, Florida, Georgia borderline. The investigation is ongoing. The GBI said once the investigation is complete, the case will be handed to the Southwestern Judicial Circuit District Attorney's Office for prosecution. If anyone has any information about this case, anonymous tips can be submitted by calling 1-800-597-TIPS. That's 1-800-597-8477. Or go online at gbi.georgia.gov/submit-tips-online, or by downloading the See Something, Send Something mobile app. A Michigan mother, Shonda Vander Ark, will spend the rest of her life in prison without parole after being convicted of killing her 15-year-old son, who police found dead and severely malnourished inside the family's home. A jury deliberated for a little more than an hour on December 15, 2023, before finding the 43-year-old mother on trial guilty of the murder of her teenage son with special needs. A judge sentenced Vander Ark on January 23, 2024, to 50 to 100 years in prison for child abuse and life without parole for her son's murder. As he read the sentence, the judge noted that he sentenced Vander Ark above what the guidelines set out. The court finds that the amount of torture that I have indicated justifies a reasonable grounds to depart from the guidelines. Vander Ark had been facing first-degree murder and child abuse charges for the death of 15-year-old son Timothy Ferguson, who police found in restraints and deprived of food for months. He weighed only 69 pounds when he died. Vander Ark was questioned extensively by police and arrested the following day, though, according to her attorney, Fred Johnson, Vander Ark was never read her Miranda rights, nor did she receive a thorough investigation and additional evidence. Timothy's older brother, Paul, had also been charged days after his mom's arrest and took the stand to testify against her. Together, Vander Ark and her son Paul were accused of a sinister pattern of abuse that may have lasted for years. On July 6, 2022, the Norton Shores Police Department responded to a report of a suspicious death and found the 15-year-old in an ice bath, malnourished and showing significant signs of abuse. As punishment for I'm not sure what behavior, but as punishment, our 15-year-old was subject to ice baths, was subject to not being fed food other than bread or bread soaked in hot sauce, Muskegon County Prosecutor D.J. Hilson said in July. Hilson confirmed the text messages were read in court, including messages between Vander Ark and Paul about Timothy's symptoms being fake. Vander Ark moved her family to Michigan from Oklahoma, where she had a history with Child Protective Services, but was never ordered to give up parental rights or have contact with her children. Instead of having her parental rights terminated, she voluntarily left the house. And from what we can tell, that's where the case kind of ended, Hilson said. At her initial court appearance, Judge Ladis Hoops stated that Vander Ark had been working as a law clerk for the Newaygo Circuit Court up until her arrest. Vander Ark pleaded not guilty. Both Vander Ark and her son testified at her trial. Paul told the jury that he had abused his brother and his mother's instruction, while Vander Ark said that the abuse was done by Paul and blamed him for severe forms of discipline she used. At one point, she appeared to vomit on the stand. At Vander Ark's sentencing, the judge told her that he didn't believe she intended to kill Timothy, but that she planned to continue to torture him, saying, "This wasn't punishment. You tortured him." An Ohio teenager is facing a list of charges after she allegedly confessed to murdering her adult boyfriend's mother and disposing the body. 18-year-old Caitlin Coons is charged with aggravated murder, tampering with evidence, abuse of a corpse, and felonious assault for the murder of Nicole Jones on April 19, 2023. In court documents obtained by Court TV, investigators said that Coons, who was 17 at the time of the murder, told police that she initially told her boyfriend, Jonathan Jones, to kill his mother, but when he failed to act, she took matters into her own hands. Coons told police that she went to Jones's home and snuck inside without his mother knowing. After giving Jones a time frame of 5 hours in which to do something about his mother and mention killing her because his mother was preventing them from being together, Coons took action when he failed to. Quote, Caitlin Coons stated that she waited for an opportunity when the victim was bending down in front of the refrigerator and strangled Nicole Jones and hit her with the rock until she heard gurgling sounds and blood from the victim's mouth. Investigators said that after the murder, Coons and her boyfriend drove to a store to buy a tarp and cleaning supplies. After returning home, they cleaned the kitchen, wrapped the victim's body in a tarp, and threw it in a dumpster. Coons was reported missing from her foster home on April 18th and later contacted an acquaintance saying that she killed 2 people, one of whom was her boyfriend's mother, according to an arrest report. Jones, who faces similar charges, including murder, robbery, and abuse of a corpse, was wearing an ankle monitor at the time of the murder. Jones had previously pleaded guilty to endangering children and attempting to commit pandering obscenities after picking up Coons in October 2022, according to court records reviewed by Court TV. At the time of the 2022 arrest, police found videos of the couple having sex. Jones was later required to register as a sex offender. The GPS coordinates from Jones's ankle monitor matched the locations of the store where Coons say they bought cleaning products and the dumpster where the body was allegedly dumped. At a court hearing prior to her formal indictment, Coons' attorneys told the court that their client was a victim of Jones, who was not supposed to have any contact with her. Nicole Jones's body was never recovered because the dumpster had been emptied and taken to a dump site before police being made aware of the body. A woman charged with killing a high-profile marketing consultant and social justice advocate in film pleaded guilty Monday. 36-year-old Jamila Elena Mickle entered the plea in Los Angeles Superior Court to charges of murder and burglary, with additional allegations that she used a firearm to commit the felonies. Prosecutors say she knocked on the door of the Los Angeles home of Michael Latt, then forced her way in and fatally shot him with a semi-automatic handgun on November 27th. He was later declared dead at a hospital. 33-year-old Latt was a well-known consultant in Hollywood whose firm focused on social impact in film and entertainment. He worked on projects with directors including Ryan Coogler and Ava DuVernay. Prosecutors and court records say Mickle had been stalking and threatening director A.V. Rockwell and targeted Latt because he was friends with Rockwell. Mickle was the subject of several restraining orders from Rockwell. Rockwell's latest film, 1001, starring Teyana Taylor, won the Grand Jury Prize at last year's Sundance Festival and earned her a Gotham Award for Breakthrough Director on the same night Latt was killed. Mickle could get life in prison if convicted. Latt's mother, Michelle Satter, a founding director of the Sundance Institute, was given an honorary Oscar for her humanitarian work on January 10th, just weeks after the killing. At the ceremony, Satter and the 2 directors she mentored who presented her the award, Coogler and Chloe Zhao, paid tribute to Latt. Michelle, you've changed our lives, but I do believe Michael was your greatest gift to the world, Coogler said. Satter said that she wished to share the award with her late son, who led with love. A California woman received 2 years of probation for killing her new boyfriend during an episode of cannabis-induced psychosis. In December, 32-year-old Bryn Specher was convicted of involuntary manslaughter for the 2018 killing of 26-year-old Chad O'Melia. At trial, experts testified Specher was experiencing a psychotic episode from smoking marijuana when she killed O'Melia. not coming from the Ventura County Star. Special and O'Melia had only been dating a few weeks when she stabbed him more than 100 times. When authorities arrived to the scene, they found Special screaming hysterically while still holding the knife in her hands, according to prosecutors. She also stabbed herself multiple times. Officers used a taser and several baton blows to disarm her. Prosecutors said Special had adverse reaction to the marijuana and suffered what experts call cannabis-induced psychotic disorder. That's according to the National Library of Medicine. A diagnosis of cannabis-induced psychotic disorder is given when one or both of hallucinations and delusions are present. The hallucinations and or delusions develop during or soon after cannabis intoxication. The disturbance does not occur exclusively during the course of a delirium, and the disturbance causes clinically significant distress or impairment in social, occupational, or other important areas of functioning. Special was sentenced to 2 years of probation with a suspended 4-year prison sentence. She was also given 100 hours of community service. According to the Ventura County Star, the judge said his sentence, quote, was based on the lack of culpability, unquote. Thanks for watching and joining me here at the drama-free true crime destination. Be sure to like, share, subscribe, and drop me a comment on this video. And be sure to follow Bethea'S Byte Reloaded all over social media. This is Bethea'S Byte, and it's reloaded.